It's about time, it's about time.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's vlog, and I thought, seeing as it's such gorgeous weather, I'd bring you outside to my garden. I haven't had a garden before. I'm loving the fact that I have got one, my beautiful lilac bush behind, which smells amazing. But this is actually the view that I see from my office window when I'm writing, so it's nice to be standing here looking at my office and not having any writing to do for a change, rather than sitting in my office looking at the sunshine in my garden, which I have been doing for most of this year so far. So this week I told you that I would tell you about some of the other characters in the new book, which is still waiting for a title. I'm sorry, as soon as we know a title there'll be a hallelujah chorus and I will tell you about it. So one of the characters is Nell's best friend Vicky, and Vicky and Nell lose their job at the beginning of the book. In the first chapter, Nell and Vicky and about 13 of their other colleagues all lose their jobs. Anyone who's lost their job will know how awful and scary that is. I had that happen to me a few years ago, and it's just horrible. So when Nell goes to San Francisco, Vicky makes a promise to keep emailing her, so that their emails go all the way through the time that Nell is out in San Francisco, and you get to see Vicky. Vicky has the best line in one-liners ever. She's obsessed with Ryan Gosling. She has a filthy sense of humour. You're absolutely going to love her. She has the kind of lines that I would love to deliver in real life, and she's kind of like Ren from It Started With a Kiss, but with bells on. Like where Ren would sort of say something amongst friends, Vicky would be shouting it from the rooftops with a megaphone, and you'll really love her. She's actually based on a very famous writing friend of mine. I have been sworn to secrecy, I'm afraid. I can't tell you who she is. She knows who she is. So there we go. As we go through the next few weeks and months, I will tell you some more of the characters. You know, with my books there's always going to be a big cast of supporting characters, and I've got some crackers this year, and I know that you're going to really love them. So I asked a few questions. I've got some questions, so let's move on to those. First question, I've got two questions from Kirsty Novelicious. Hi Kirsty. Novelicious fantastic, been fantastic supporters of me right from the very first book. I'm sure you all know their site. It's the best site ever, and I will put a link on my blog if, for those of you who haven't happened to come across it, but it's a really good website. So thanks for your questions. Here we go. Question one, do I have any rituals I have to do before I start writing or while I'm writing? Have to have a cuppa, very important. Tends to be decaf nowadays. I can't have too much caffeine. I get allergic to caffeine, which is quite weird. And so I have to have a nice cup, and I have a cup that's got Tigger on the handle, and that's my sort of favourite writing cup. Have to have a blanket over my knees. I've got one from the Atlantic Blanket Company, which those of you who follow my blog will know I talk about them all the time, and actually gave one away in my newsletter a couple of months ago. Just the best blankets ever. They're so lovely, and because you know they're made by the sea, they kind of make me think of the sea, even though I'm in quite obviously landlocked where I am. So those have to be there. While I'm writing, I just need to feel comfortable, and I need to feel cozy. I have to have music on. People I've been listening to this time are bands like Within Temptation, Imagine Dragons, Ollie Murs, much to Bob's chagrin. He's had the Ollie Murs new album on pretty much repeat during the first time of writing the book 5. So yeah, I have to have those things around me, but generally I just need to get into a space where I get on with it. So hope that answers your question. Second question, do I find it easier to write a book now than when I first started? Well, when I first started I didn't realise I was writing a book. It was just a very big Word file that just got bigger and bigger on my computer, and I didn't realise it was a novel. I have to write a lot quicker. This year I've had to write incredibly quickly, because I've essentially written two novels, because we wrote one lot and then trashed it and wrote another one. I'd say this year's been the hardest in terms of writing, for believing in what I'm doing, and for just the speed that it's had to be written at is crazy. I don't think I could ever write 2 novels in a year. Normally I think it would just tip me over the edge. But in terms of planning, and in terms of feeling where chapters end and knowing kind of the structure of a book, I'm probably learning more every time. So kind of in a way yes, and kind of in a way no. So I hope that answers your question. Next question is from lovely Dot Scribbles. Again, another fantastic website. If you've not visited Dot's site, you need to go and have a look. Great book review site, and thanks very much for your question, Dot. Dot wants to know, do you prefer to write about likeable characters, or rather not so nice ones just as interesting? Both, really. I have baddies in quite a few of my books, and it's quite nice writing as them. Like, their lines are quite nice to write. It's like actors always say, if you write goody two shoes, if you act goody two shoe characters all the time, they get a bit boring. I quite like characters that I'm fascinated by, so that could be because they're nice, or it could be because they're really awful. And the really, really awful ones, the ones that are really camp and baddies, are always going to be fun to write because they're just so sort of devastatingly bad, and they are normally quite camp, which is quite fun to write as well. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much. So you might have noticed I've moved and the sun is significantly lower in the sky. That's because my battery ran out while I was recording. There we go, technical difficulties. But I'm here, lovely late afternoon sunshine in Dudley. So a few more questions. Rosie Blake, who's Rosie B Books on Twitter. Hi Rosie, thank you very much for your question. Rosie wants to know, how do I choose what person to write in and how many points of views to use? I've only ever written from a single point of view. I'd quite like to write multi-point of view in the future, so that's something I might try. No plans to do that particularly, but I think I'd like to have a go and just see if that would work. What person to write in normally? Well, my books actually take it in turns, so Fairy Tale of New York was in first person, Welcome to My World was in third, It Started With a Kiss is in first, When I Fall in Love is in third. I don't think it really matters. I think it's what best serves the story is probably the best advice I can give. For example, in When I Fall in Love, because of what else he's been through, and particularly because we're dealing with loss, I think if it had been in first person it might have been a bit too intense and a bit too kind of in your face, so I felt it was better to be able to take that back to third person and kind of give you an overall view of sort of what was going on. So that was something that was quite a conscious decision. So I hope that answers your question. And final question from Rachel Hawes. Hi Rachel, she's Rachel Fusion on Twitter. Rachel wants to know, how do I choose past or present tense for books? Generally I write in past tense just because I find that easier. I actually find that easier to read. I'm not a particular fan of present tense in books. I find it a little bit too, I don't know, I don't think it's very lyrical. I like to think when I'm hearing a story that it's kind of already happened and I'm sort of learning about it. Having said that, in my second novel, Welcome to My World, I actually wrote the start of each chapter and the whole of the last chapter in present tense, so that you were really in the moment with Harry, and then all the sort of the backstory and how she got to be in the middle toilet of Stoneyard Village Lose was all told in past tense. The main reason that I did that was when I started writing it, it's before anything happened with my books. I just wanted to see if I could get my head around it, because I couldn't work it out when I was reading books in present tense. It always seemed to jar, so I thought the best way to understand it would be to actually write it. So that was why it was in there, and it was useful for the passage of time. It was quite nice to have the two things. I quite like having kind of a scene within a scene, and you can kind of go backwards and forwards into it, so that's quite useful. I think most of my books will be past tense just because it seems to suit my style of storytelling better, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. I think it comes down to personal preference. So I hope that answers your questions. There we go. Late evening sun with birds singing, it's beautiful. Ask me a question for next week. What would you like to know? Publishing, writing, anything. Probably not gardening, as you can see. Not particularly good gardening at the moment. But all you need to do is leave a comment in the box beneath this post, or send me an email to mirandawordy@gmail.com. And remember to get your entries in for New Rose Prize. They're all coming in, but I need to read yours, and all the details of that are on my website. So until then, take care, have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye.